Good evening runners, and welcome back to another video from me, that running girl. In today's video I'm going to be reviewing the Nike Vomero and the Nike Vomero Plus and telling you about my experience running in this shoe as a runner who has run for 20 years and 32 marathons. If you watched my video a few weeks ago, you will know that it was one of my resolutions to start running in Nike running shoes again. I religiously only ran in Nike running shoes for the best part of 15 years and they discontinued my favorite shoes, so I switched over to Asics. Fast forward to 2026 and I feel like Nike have come out with a range of really good shoes again, in terms of they have a good range, not just the super shoes, and I really wanted to try the Vomeros. I also ran in the Nike Invincible for a number of years and I also discontinued those. And so if anyone else who ran in the Nike Invincible, stay tuned because I will be pointing out the similarities and differences between the Nike Invincible and the Nike Vomero and the Nike Vomero Plus. So first things first, why did I buy these shoes in the first place? Like I said, I used to run in the Nike Invincible. I got on really well with that shoe, but eventually I did go over to the Asics Nova Blast just because the Nova Blast was lighter, springier. I felt like it had more energy return. I felt like it was bouncier, and I also liked the way that the profile of the shoe throughout felt. In the Nike Invincible, I feel like the midsole was kind of cut in too much and it sometimes gave me a bit of arch pain, whereas I feel like the profile on the Asics Nova Blast 5, even though there is a massive amount of FS Blast Max all the way around the shoe, it doesn't have that kind of cut into the mid-arch point. So it's generally a much lower profile shoe in terms of the way it feels when you're sitting on the ground. That being said, there is a good stack height in the shoe, so it's still a max cushioned trainer. It still has that elevation and lift in it that you want in a cushioned shoe. But for me personally, the Invincible just felt to kind of cut away in the midfoot area, and that's why I went over to the Asics Nova Blast and have been running in them for a very long time. I just wanted to add a few more shoes into my rotation, basically, which is why I tried the Vomero and the Vomero Plus, and I have read so many reviews online of these, and personally I found it really difficult to choose between the Vomero and the Vomero Plus, so I thought I'm just going to get them both and I'm just going to try them out and I'm going to see which I prefer, because let's be honest, running shoes are the #1 thing that you should be investing in as a runner. So firstly, straight out of the box, I found the Vomero a little bit uninspiring, not in terms of the colorway, because I think this colorway is absolutely gorgeous. But when I first put them on, I felt like even though there is the Zoom X running through the shoe here, this part of the shoe to me felt quite plasticky and kind of not stiff, but kind of cheap feeling. And then when I put them on my feet and started, jogging up and down on the spot and running inside the way that everyone does that kind of inside test with them, I just felt like they didn't have that kind of energy return back from them. It just kind of felt like my foot was hitting the ground and that's where it was staying, versus the Asics Nova Blast 5, when your foot hits the ground, it feels like, energy return comes back up from that bounce. They definitely didn't have the amount of bounce that I was expecting in them. I was also a little bit disappointed by the fact that throughout the shoe, it feels smaller all over, which I would expect from a racing shoe. But given that this is primarily your kind of daily miles and, Sunday long run workhorse, I wasn't expecting this to have a kind of narrow fit throughout. So I would definitely size up half a size or even a whole size in this shoe if you're going to get it, which I wasn't expecting. I definitely found like my toes were kind of hitting the front of the shoe more than they should, and I definitely felt like my metatarsals in general couldn't kind of splay out the way that I like to run. It felt like very much like I was kind of you know, clumped together in this part of the shoe. That's one thing that is different between these two shoes, is the fact that the Vomero Plus does seem to have more room in the toe box and general width of the toe box area. And even if you check out these shoes together, if you lay them down and you look at them, these are the same size shoe, but you can tell that the white one, which is the Vomero Plus, and the purple one, which is the regular Vomero, there is definitely a size difference between them. So the Vomero Plus for me definitely came up bigger in terms of longer and has more area in the toe box and the general width throughout the shoe. And I'm someone that likes the fit to be a little bit on the bigger side, just because when spring, summer comes around, I feel like my feet do kind of swell up a little bit. And like I say, I like that way that my metatarsals can all kind of splay out in the shoe. One thing I really love about this shoe though is the look of it and the similarities to the Nike Invincible. I would say that it's quite similar to the Nike Invincible in the general construction of the shoe, in the general look of the shoe. But in terms of the feel of the shoe, I would say this one is more like the Nike Invincible in terms of the bounce, the spring, the energy return. That's why I ultimately loved the Nike Invincible, and that's why I will be continuing to run in the Vomero Plus for my daily runs and long runs. I felt like it's definitely lighter than I was expecting. I would say if you were comparing it to the Asics Nova Blast 5, it does feel a little bit heavier. It almost makes the Asics Nova Blast 5 feel racy as a shoe, even though they're both stability and highly cushioned shoes and ultimately doing the same thing. They have very similar amount of stack height, both in the heel and throughout the shoe. But just generally the way that it's engineered with the foam all around it, you know, there's plush cushioning on both of them. The heels are both very, very good, but it just makes the Asics Nova Blast 5 feel more kind of snappy. That's how I generally felt about it. I do really, really like the shoe. I have run in it and it causes me no issues. Also dissimilar to the Invincible, it doesn't feel like it cuts too much into the midsole area, so that was one thing I was concerned about. Also, a lot of people have said had concerns about the stability in this shoe when cornering, so tight corners for me have not been an issue. I feel just because the Zoom X is, you know, around the entire shoe, it doesn't feel like any kind of instability for me on the corners. I generally really love the look of the shoe. One thing I would prefer is if it was a little more featuring like a more of a, it does feature a mesh upper, but I can see this being quite a hot shoe in the spring summer. Again, when you contrast that to the Asics Nova Blast 5, the Asics Nova Blast 5 definitely feels like the fabric on the upper feels a tiny bit more breathable, and just because Asics Nova Blast 5 doesn't have that kind of bulk of fabrics, it literally just uses this fabric, whereas the Vomero Plus has a range of kind of mesh and different fabrics throughout, even on the lacing system. And I feel like that just adds a little bit more warmth when you are potentially training on a really hot day or somewhere hot abroad. I generally do like this trainer though. I can see it going into my rotation, and it was definitely what I kind of expected from this trainer. I'll be completely honest, I did expect the Nike Vomero to offer that same level of bounce and energy return, but it just wasn't there for me. I just didn't feel it, and ultimately it's not a shoe that I will be putting into my rotation, which I'm disappointed about because I was quite excited about having 2 new shoes in my rotation, but at least I know the Vomero Plus will definitely live up to that. In terms of distances, I would wear the Vomero Plus for anything from, you know, 5K training run, definitely up to a marathon or even ultra kind of road distance. I haven't worn this shoe off-road, but I can see that I can't see any issues why you wouldn't take this shoe off-road. It has a good traction pattern on the back. Obviously doesn't have any kind of features for an off-road shoe, but you would not expect that given that it's not an off-road shoe. But I've definitely worn the Invincible before off-road and in off-road races and had no issues. And this shoe was ultimately an evolution of the Invincible since they discontinued it and brought this one out. So yeah, I highly rate this shoe. It will be going into my rotation. And if you're looking for, debating which shoe to get in terms of the Vomero or the Vomero Plus, which are pretty much both the same price. So I paid £154 UK pounds for both of these shoes. So ultimately the Vomero Plus does not currently in the UK cost any more than the regular Vomero. So I would see no reason why you wouldn't just go for the updated version, because to me it just feels so much more plush. You get so much more bounce and energy return, and it just fits nicer in terms of letting your metatarsals splay out in the forefoot area. And that's ultimately why I will be doing my half marathon and marathon training for 2026 in this shoe. I really hope you found that helpful, and I hope you're all running well, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.